Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you well, Vito. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
How are you doing? It's we're not starting at John. We just informed that we're checking here the final, and then we start in 2 minutes.
Perfect.
So, okay, thank you.
Из передачи в посыльном коде. Поначалу казалось, что эта штука мне подойдет по скорости передачи информации. Что-то получилось.
А что предполагается с ним делать?
Наблюдать некоторый эффект. Я пытался так слегка сказал на моем.
Hello again. We see that the participants are still joining. So if you do not mind, we'll take additional 5 minutes so that we start when more people are in. And this may be important because it's important for everybody. Thank you. So in 5 minutes, we'll check again the situation and open. So, welcome everybody again. So this, we are at 4 o'clock in Bonn, depending on your time. So, and this is the second session of the breakout group on operationalizations of the reviews. So we had a first session between 10 and 1 o'clock here in accordance to Bond's time in the morning, and we're going and there was some presentation, some discussions on the questions, and then the group progressed with some elements, potential elements for conclusions. So this probably will, because this is different sessions and not all of you have participated, we probably have to go back to the beginning and start again with the presentations, and then the questions that you have sent before to us on the presentations, and then you may have a space for additional questions from the floor, and then you'll move to another part where the two co-facilitators, the same in the previous session in the morning. Let's simplify and call it in the morning. They were Marta Alfaro and Yanis Sempos, and they will continue guiding you with the development of the elements for the draft conclusions. Some of the things may be worth noting. So what you're going to do in the presentations, there will be 4 presentations. The first one will be on and these presentations are mostly based on another important thing, is the background paper that's available on the web page, and also the presentations are available on the web page. And the first presentation is I will present it by myself on the statistical information. Then you have presentations by Klaus Radunsky with some informations on another type of the review of the European internal mechanism. And then we also invited Melanie Sporer from the European Environmental Agency, and she will provide you more details on how this works with more graphical information. And then we have two informations on the international consultation analysis process, which is conducted by another team of the Transparency Division, and this team is led by Shuhong. The presentation was made by Karen, and let's see how it goes. So in addition to that, we have in the morning we use extensively the chat. So while we were presenting, participants were adding in the chat their views, their questions, and that in the end of these sessions we look at them, we collected them, and they were well, there are some questions for presenters that these were addressed during the presentations, and then another set of comments and issues and recommendations were recommendations for the outcome. And then what it was Yanis did, he just he just looked at them and then was asking for if necessary for the clarifications. And I don't want to say what Yanis and Marta will do, but that's, I think we agree that provide as much as possible in terms of guidance what you think should be included. Yes, the difference between this session and the second, I think I will repeat myself, is that you're not going to start from scratch. You're going to have already the elements that are coming from them. So I mean, I know it's a bit let's say unbalanced, but that's, you can also do different texts. I think apart from this, here on our side, it's myself, Roman, and Tina. So we have, of course, a smaller meeting, a smaller team. The other half of the team, Javier, Claudia, and Kirsten, they're on the other room doing the consistency. So please excuse us if sometimes we need to stop a little bit and think, put ourselves together and see what's happening in the chat, because we have to handle the chat, the documents, and several things. So without much ado, I'll move to my presentation. Okay, and this the only thing is this is a much more informal environment, so we're expecting you to share your views in a more informal way, and then we came out from here with the conclusions, and then that's I forgot to mention. Then this element for the conclusions, this will be transmitted tomorrow morning to the co-facilitators, Michael, which I think is here, and Thelma, and then they will consider your contributions, and of course then they will do what they consider appropriate with that. But the point is that in principle there's no plans to come back to these elements in detail. So whatever you decide, you have to take in consideration, you're not going to discuss this in the plenary or the language. And we also encourage you to be pragmatic. Look at the bigger picture. Look at the things that you think in this remote environment with limited time you'll be able to conclude, and as much as possible try to come up with perfect language with the comma, or that may not work, and then on Thursday, by today, we will have no conclusions, and then on Thursday, there are also an issue, because again, this is something you end your work here today on the breakout group. That's the plan, not moving it to the next day. But this is just to help you. This is not mandatory language guidance. I think it will help. It will be helpful to you to ensure that you achieve your results. So I think it's visible on screen. So we don't need to see the. Roland, maybe you can move. Next slide, please. Next. So this first presentation is presentation of statistical information, and basically it's also contained in the background paper. And importance of it is just it was a starting point. So this is the information that we came out from the analysis of the reports, and that's what we have noticed, and then leading to the creations of this breakout group and the topics that were considered. The first one is the length of review reports. In terms, we can see here in terms of pages and in terms of terms of issues, and you can see that we have a significant number of issues, and this has slightly increased from 100 to 110, and then there's a long wide variation in the range from 52 issues to almost 200 issues, and in terms of the pages, the range is, I mean, we excluding one case in the 148 is very exceptional case. So you can see that there's a situation in terms of the review reports. Now, next slide, please, Roman. And this one is the information about the type of issues that could be relevant, of course, because that's also impacts on the reviews, on the number of issues. You can see where there are more. It's clearly in transparency and then accuracy. Next one slide. And then here we try to see information. We made a kind of a balance of the reviews and what happened between 1 year and the other. So we start with table 3, and then you see how many were resolved. We have about, well, depends on the years, but about maybe on average 50% of the issues are solved, and then they transit to the next one, and then they will continue. But basically, I think they're piling up. This we're talking about the average, and then the final slide. So Roman, please. And this is the time to complete the report. There's some improvements on average and the minimum over the years, and all types are less maybe in centralized reviews, and I think the situations in desk reviews is quite good, and then it's been more stable. So I would propose, I think we are going to show all the presentations, so I would invite Klaus, if it's available, to show the next presentations on information from the EU. Yeah.
Thank you. So could you again share the first page of my presentation first, and then the third slide, and then the last slide? So first.
Yes, that's possible. Roman will be in control, and you just say when you need to move, and we do it.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretariat for inviting me to contribute to this background document and prepare a presentation on the lessons learned from the review process related to the effort sharing decision. This is the internal European Union regulation that helps to manage the emission reduction of greenhouse gases. And I have also been lead reviewer for several times of the review process under this effort sharing regulation, and so this might be, that we developed some improvements in process, some improvements in the review reports in order to manage a quick and still effective review. And I only you had the opportunity to have access to the whole presentation and to the background document, as well as some oral presentation. And I will focus now only on the third slide, on the current status of UNFCCC reviews. And just to remind you that there was always some lesson learned reflected in the further development of the template for review reports, and the last enhancements could significantly improve transparency and enhance the quality of review reports and the process. And this is now a very comprehensive review report which offers a lot of technical detail. So it is mainly written by the sector expert reviewers for the specialists in the field, and on average, you just noted it, perhaps it has a length of about 50 pages. And this is quite a significant number, not only to read, but also to prepare, and therefore a heavy workload, for instance, for quality assurance, quality control. And despite the many pages, those reports fail to convey clear and simple to understand messages for the policy level, the conference of the parties. So, because for the policy people, what is really relevant is the information. Can we trust the figures? Are they coherent with the UNFCCC reporting guidelines and the IPCC good practice guidance? Yes or no? And if not, what have been the corrections that would align them with those guidelines so that we can have a good comparison among those figures. And this simple message is unfortunately not yet part of the current review reports. Now let's look at the last slide where we built on this assessment. I do not want to go into any detail. I compared a country with quite an inventory system that is in good shape, where there are not too many issues that have been identified, and a country where there is still room for improvement and where a lot of issues have been identified. And of course, what is common to the review reports under the effort sharing regulation as well as under the UNFCCC's, the poorer the quality of the inventory system, the higher the number of issues that are identified and the longer the review reports. However, the EU review reports include mainly information for non-experts and only to a very limited amount those detailed information that can be found in the review reports prepared under the UNFCCC. It is limited only to significant issues that might trigger a recalculation or a revision of the numbers, the emission figures that are key, that are the final outcome of the exercise to prepare an emission inventory. And in order to can implement such review process, the European Union has developed specific tools that support the process, and Melanie will provide more details later on those tools. And I just want to indicate one very relevant issue, because actually the review process under the European Union effort sharing decision is building on the report and the review modalities developed under the UNFCCC and the KP. But what is done here is that the decision, what is the modality for a second step, is based on the result of the first step, that is a desk review, comparable to the desk review prepared by the Secretariat. And only if the first step identifies potential significant issues, then this greenhouse gas inventory will be forwarded to the technical expert review team, which will perform a centralized review. So if the inventory is in very good shape, you only have the first phase and no second phase. And furthermore, an in-country visit is only limited to those sectors, to those issues which could not be resolved by a written procedure during the week of the centralized review. Only in that case, the lead reviewers and the core team request to have an in-country visit in order to sort out issues that could not have been resolved by a written procedure only. So I feel that this is quite an interesting approach, because it helps to reduce the amount of work, it helps to meet timelines, and it still provides very relevant information for the policy level to implement the control of greenhouse gas emissions. I thank you, and I will, in the later phase of the conversation today, also address those quite interesting questions that were submitted in a written format by some of your colleagues. Thank you. Vito, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Klaus. And also, again, I think this a more complete description is included in the background paper and also the online presentation. So I recommend you also to look. But meanwhile, and we thank Melanie for having accepted this invitation in such a short time. There's a presentation done in the morning. So Melanie Sporer from the EEA, and she is going to present also information on the review process, and I think it's very graphical and very helpful. And Melanie was with us, I think in 2013 or something, with also presenting, and so I think will be very interesting, and maybe we can also upload this presentation, if you don't mind, in the webpage. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen.
Yes, that's.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter, to allow us to share our experience in this forum and for inviting me. My name is Melanie Sporer, and I'm coordinating together with Claire Kohl, the EA Review Secretariat. And I would like to complement Klaus' presentation and to introduce you now very briefly in the EU's review of greenhouse gas inventories under the effort sharing legislation, and in particular the structure of our review process and the emission review tool. So this flowchart shows the structure of the review and the timeline from the top to the bottom when you look at the left. And I would like to focus only on two aspects of the effort sharing review here. The first aspect is the review consists of two steps. This is also what Klaus explained before. So the step one, the initial checks, it's a screening of semi-automated quality checks of the inventory of all 27 EU member states and plus UK, Iceland and Norway. And they are reviewed all at the same time. And these checks are performed every year as an integrated part of the QA/QC procedure of the EU inventory compilation. And this step includes already a question and answer loop with the member states, and the experts identify potential significant issues that are issues that are over or underestimates above a certain significant threshold. And from this initial step, initial check, step one, we typically see about 900 findings for all 30 countries. And obviously it's very different from country to country, but overall. Then follows the step two, and which leads me actually to the second aspect. We have two different versions of a step two. We have a step two for an annual review and a step two for a comprehensive review. The light version, where only potential significant issues, you see it in the first orange column, only potential significant issues are followed up for those countries where potential significant issues are identified. So the countries that had already a good inventory without potential significant issues are not going in a second step at all. So this is very light. And then we have in some years a comprehensive review where for all countries, all sectors are thoroughly reviewed, and this comprehensive review is consisting of a desk review and a centralized review that normally takes place in Copenhagen. And such a comprehensive review we have in specific years. For example, we had one in 2016 when we had to adjust our targets in the EU for the change of the guidelines from 1996 guidelines to 2006 guidelines, and therefore we made a comprehensive review. Or this year, we are setting the targets for the next decade, meaning from 2021 to 2030. We have annual national targets in the EU. And for this target setting process, we again do a comprehensive review. So for a comprehensive review, just to give you an order of magnitude, we normally have about 1,700 or 2,000 findings for all the countries. And then we have in-country visits, but those in-country visits are only performed if we are not able to solve issues in a series of webinars or in written procedure. So it's really only in exceptional cases. And we normally don't have more than 1 or 2 per year. This year, when we have a comprehensive review, we would normally have a little bit more, but due to the COVID-19, we had to do our review remotely. So I'm going now to the tool itself. This image shows the workflow of the emission review tool. That's the core tool that we use for the communication between the review team and the countries. And this emission review tool determines the roles and the workflow of the entire review process. And it is built in access layers, so every person only sees the sectors and countries they are responsible for. One very important feature is the 4I principle. So you can see here on the left, the sector expert starts and creates an observation, which is a finding, and a draft question. And these draft questions will be checked by the counterpart reviewer and by the lead reviewer before it is submitted to the country. And this is the 4I principle I was talking about. The counterpart reviewer is another reviewer that is responsible for the same sector, but for a different set of countries. And this is also helping us to ensure equal treatment among the different countries. And we also have developed a similar system for the answer process by the member states. There is a country coordinator who is the main contact point in the country, and this person can invite other member states experts to help draft the reply, also in a 4I principle system. And at the end of the day, the member states coordinator will submit the reply to the review team and has the full overview of all the replies. There are several Q&A, so question and answer loops possible here, and files can be uploaded and it's password protected if necessary when there is confidential data. So, and then in green you see after several Q&A loops, there might be then the conclusion. And the conclusion again is drafted by the sector expert, but together checked and refined by a counterpart expert and the lead reviewer. And this is the phase where we draft the recommendations and the technical corrections, which are the quantitative corrections to the data that we have to agree together with the countries. And of course, these recommendations and technical corrections will also be quality checked again by a quality coordinator and by the review coordinator. It's also interesting maybe in this forum that the conclusions that are drafted here are directly extracted, and from those extractions we produce semi-automatically the review reports. So the review reports are designed in a way that they consist of very little individualized text and mostly standardized text and tables and key messages with how many technical corrections and what is the change of numbers. So it's really reduced, and a lot of the findings that are not a recommendation and that are not significant are accessible in the tool. So countries can go back in the tool and use those we call it conclusion notes to improve their inventories, but those don't end up in the review reports because they are seen as not significant enough. We also use other tools besides the emission review tool. For example, we have checking tools and that the sector expert is using to find the problems. We have sector checklists as the UNFCCC as well, and also we have a progress monitoring tool with visualizations that is linked to the emission review tool, and it shows us at every moment how many findings are open and closed and resolved and unresolved, and with how many are open still with the sector expert, how many are open with the country or with the lead reviewer, so that we can really see the responsiveness and the process, especially during the peak periods. So, and then to sum up my last slide, what we tried to do when we decided for the structure of these 2 steps and when we built the emission review tool was to enforce certain quality principles by design. That means that principles like consistency and the equal treatment of countries within one review cycle or across different review cycles is already enshrined by the counterpart checks, these 4I principles with the lead reviewers. So the reviews cannot, they cannot go beside this. It's determined by the tool. And then also the transparency in the documentation of the findings is consistent, and also we try to avoid that reviewers ask the same questions year by year. So the reviewers need to go back to see the documentation also from previous years before they ask a new question. Then we try to increase the efficiency and the organization of the review, and also, of course, minimizing unnecessary burden on the country's side by choosing this 2-step process, that there is no heavy review every year, but only the light version. And the heavier comprehensive review is less frequent. So thank you very much. This is all I wanted to share with you, and I hope it's helpful in the process. Thank you.
No, we thank you, Melanie, for coming, and I would propose that now we move to the next presentation, and then in the end we come back as Klaus mentions to the previous questions. You don't have any, but then we'll open the floor for more questions. So if you can remain. So now I would invite Almajin. Almajin works in the unit responsible for ICA in the Secretariat Transparency Division, as I mentioned, and she's going to make a presentations on the ICA process. Not Alma, the presentation is already available, so you and the people were able to watch it on okay. So you just can briefly explain what's there, so you don't need to go in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Vito. Good afternoon, everybody. So just to give you a quick overview on this process, can I have the next slide, please? So just 3 main components. We'll provide a recap since you have had a look of this presentation. Just quickly on the ICA overview, the process and timelines for the technical analysis process, and just some key aspects of the report preparation. Next slide, please. Okay, so for those of you who may be familiar with it, just a refresher, and for those of you who may not, just very quickly to highlight the primary objective of this ICA process is to increase the transparency of the mitigation actions. It is guided by some key principles, which are probably a bit different to the Annex 1 review process. So this process is conducted in a manner which is non-intrusive, non-punitive, and it's respectful of national sovereignty. So just very quickly, the submission of BURs, biannual update reports, it initiates the whole ICA process. So within 6 months of submission, this technical analysis process is triggered. The Secretariat has its administrative roles under this process. And as you can see to the right, we have all the activities that the Secretariat undertakes in preparation for the technical analysis. So this first step, the technical analysis summary report, is the primary output, which is published on the website and noted by the SBI. All parties who have submitted and published BUR and technical analysis summary report immediately qualify for the facilitative sharing of views, which normally occurs under the SBI, where parties present, and so we have this on record. Next slide, please. So this technical analysis, as you may know, we have a team of technical experts that we identify as the TTE that has been mandated to perform 3 primary tasks. The first, of course, to identify the extent of information in the BUR, and this is to indicate some level of completeness of this information reported. And we have in the guidelines, there are actually set areas of information, the thematic components of what should be included. We have these tools that we provide that support this process, and so a number of tools, as you see. The second aspect is undertaking the technical analysis, which is basically viewing the information in the report and conducting a detailed technical analysis. And of course, identifying the capacity building needs, which is the most important aspect of this process of parties. The next slide, please. So, I mean, I've already alluded to the timeline that we have 6 months from the submission. The entire process takes about 9 months. And as you can see, there's involvement of the parties from the initial submission all the way to the end. And we have 3 main phases. We identify as the pre-technical analysis phase, where all the preparatory and administrative work is done by the Secretariat, the teams, and the parties. We have the technical analysis week where this report is prepared. And of course, we have the post-technical analysis phase, which is where you have the report being finalized and published on the website. So in the technical analysis process itself, that takes about 9 months for completion. Next slide, please. And just to give you some key points and milestones for the preparation of the summary report, at the end of the week, similar to the Annex 1 process, we have the 0 order draft, and it goes through the usual QC and editing by the Secretariat. The QA by our dedicated officer. We have this interaction with parties, receive their comments, and the Secretariat provides support to enable the TTEs to reflect the party's concern. And of course, the party clears this report and it is published once the party has cleared. So although this whole step is 9 months, we have had quite a few cases where we have parties producing it in record time, 3 to 6 months. So it has been working, and there's always room for improvement, but yes, it has been working, and we continue to improve the process. Thank you. I think that's the last slide.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Alma. And thank you very much for making this presentation also in a very short notice from today. And now we're moving just, and I hope we will try to be very brief. We have received already some questions from the several participants. Not all of them are here. We receive, and then we're going to address those comments. So the first ones we have is on maybe on statistical information. I have one comment from Sandro, and the comment I was saying is if the timeliness of it says timeliness of the publication of the review report is an issue only if it does not allow a country to take early action to address the finding, and I think probably I'm sure that Sandro knows that, and the issue is that although some reports are prepare late. The parties, by the end of the review week, they received the provisional main findings that was explained in the presentation by Roman yesterday. And these provisional main findings, although it says main findings, the current practice has been to the teams by the end of the review week. They send basically the full table 3 and table 5 to the party, and the party then has 2 weeks to comment. And the objective of that is so the party knows the issues. Of course, then there's some possible change in the language in the report, and this has to do with the QA and QC and some editorial changes, and because the lead reviewers and the QC officers may not have the time during the review week to look so carefully at the report. So there may be some changes in the language, but more or less the parties have this information. And then maybe I can invite Klaus to comment on the lessons learned from the internal EU review. Klaus, if you
Thank
feel
you.
listening.
So there are 3 observations, questions from Sandro Frederici. And the first one, is an observation, which is that the European Union internal review process is a professional activity where reviewers are rightly supported for their time and skills invested in the review by funds made available by the countries under review. And he says that this is in practice a domestic verification process. The comparison with an independent international process based on the voluntary commitment of reviewers like the UNFCCC review isn't so straightforward. And of course, he is in principle right, but I also want to say that any such change would require a COP decision by consensus of parties, and the consideration of such change seems to be outside the scope of lead reviewers meeting. And of course, Sandro also knows that, and therefore is his second question. Do you think that reviewers should be professionalized? And my answer is that I do not want now to share my personal view. Unfortunately, we do not have a coffee break so that we can have a chat with Sandro, and I would explain to him my personal view. But now he had a third question in relationship to that issue. Otherwise, assuming that reviewers will continue to be committed on a voluntary basis, do you think that an increased role in the quality assurance of the inventory by the professional component of the review process, the secretarial staff, could provide for improvement similar to that noted for the European Union process? And in such a case, how to address the UN third-party role in the review? And my reflection on that suggestion and question is that, of course, the lead reviewers meeting can, as in the past, agree suggestions to modify the review reports, to modify the review process, to modify the tools available for ERTs, and it can request additional tools for the review process, and then it will depend on the availability of resources agreed by parties how fast an implementation could be made. So these are the reflections on those important observations and requests from Sandro. And I might continue with another request by...
sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Maybe I can just comment also on this, on Sandro.
Yes, please.
And if so, from the point of view of Secretariat, so there are 2 issues here: the professionalizations of the experts and of the reviewers, and then the second one is about supporting the QA efforts. And the second one, the QA or the QC, that's maybe more easy because to support the reviews, sometimes we contract experts to support the reviews, and they are not part of the secretariat. So they're using funds, core or supplementary that are allocated for that purpose. So I think that's basically, well, it depends on the level you do it, but that's maybe less controversial. The second one, the second question on professionalization, and Sandra also mentioned an honorary, the salary. The practice that we have is to support developing countries, support EIT countries, and also on exceptional basis. There's other cases. For developed countries, I think there's not these procedures, and assuming that this will be developed by their own countries. That's something that may need broader discussions, and so it's difficult to have a decision. And I know that it's been discussed many times, many years, and that's a complicated issue. But in terms of honoraries, I think will be very difficult to establish. I think the SA was one thing, honoraries something completely different. So yes, back to you, Klaus. I don't know which. We have still questions from. Well, actually, we have one question from Elsa on the technical analysis, and I don't know if Shuhong or Alma wants to complement, but the questions was about the technical analysis process, and then there's a reference to SIC parties agreement. So, and then the question by Elsa was the primary purpose. What was the primary purpose of the telephone call during the technical analysis week, and is to seek agreement about findings. And so, if so, why is that? And the response was that the telephone call during the week, the technical analysis weeks, seeks to further clarifications from parties on issues that have been identified by the TTE, which is equivalent to ERT, on informations reported in the BUR, and to confirm with parties the capacity building needs identified. Yes, so, and then we have questions by John.
Yes, should I?
Yeah, you can, and then just and then John, I was just trying to clean those that could be from me, and then you and then you keep the other one. I think from me it's just the Songli is the use of the technical analysis summary report. Is saying that's very useful. I think that's we thank you for this walking remark. So Klaus, please, we have the comments from John and Samir.
Thank you. Now, John Wetterson, he asks whether it would be possible to set a maximum limit on the number of issues that could be open for a country at any one time. And this, you might have noted the number of issues and how they are different across countries. And I feel that, of course, that's a possibility, but the main issue is that we live up to the TCCA principles and those principles are common to the UNFCCC as well as to the EU internal rules and guidelines, and it might be a delicate balance that without we have to observe those principles, and this makes it difficult if there are inconsistencies to limit the number of issues. The next one are three more simple questions from Samir Tantawi. The first one is, are the review reports of the European Union made by the TERT published? Because it would be very useful input in UNFCCC review processes. And the simple answer is yes. And because those final review reports are made public on the website of the European Commission, and you will, I feel, one of the outcome of this lead reviewer meeting will be a link to this site of the European Commission where you can find all those review reports. The next question of Samir was, are there pre-identified criteria to measure how the review findings are significant, or is it left to expert judgments? And indeed, there is a quite comprehensive tool, a decision tree, that helps to come to coherent results, coherent across sectors, across member states, across review experts. And it has been carefully designed and described, and coherence of the reviews, as already indicated, is a significant feature of the European Union designed review process supporting the effort sharing decision. And the last question of Samir is, what do you mean by the core team? This is mentioned and it's explained also in the footnote in the background document. It is comprised, the core team, of 2 QA/QC officers, 1 member of the support team of the EEA, and 1 coordinator and the lead reviewers. So this is the core team that is has an important function. With that, I would finalize my consideration of the written requests, and I check now whether there is something in the chat or not.
Klaus, is not yet any comments on the chat, and
okay.
So thank you very much. So now actually there are two. No, you have from Melanie, and you have one comment from John, but and then you can see there is a question.
I see.
But I think it's a question common. Yeah. Maybe, John, you could clarify the questions that you need for the clarification.
Thanks, Vitor. Klaus, thank you very much for your presentation. And Melanie, thank you. Thank everybody for their presentations and the thoughtful analysis. This issue, well, the problem of ever-expanding issues is a problem. And as reviewers, we might not agree with all the issues that were raised, but we have to respond to them, and we have to transfer them from one review to another until we consider them closed. And it can be difficult. I think my challenge to all of us is just to think, how might we concentrate on the most important issues whilst fulfilling the requirements of us as lead reviewers? I'm not sure there is an easy answer to this question, and it might be that, well, we just have to identify all issues consistently. And therefore, for some countries, there will be a lot, and for others, there will be a few. But I just raise, I think I offer a challenge to all of us about how we might limit our report size and ensure it has maximum impact to help a country improve the quality of its inventory. Thank you.
May I raise my hand, Vitor?
No, please. I want to say thank you, John, and also reiterate what Klaus said that you can use the chat from now on, and well, you could use it from the beginning, but we encourage you to write your comments and suggestions for the outcome of this meeting, also in the chat, or questions, and then we will continue with the next the second part, which will be discussions of how to progress on the bug, and this will be managed by Marta or Yanis as co-facilitators for this bug. So please, Klaus, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just want to come back to the remark made by John just before on the chat. And of course, my answer is the European Union tried to focus on the real relevant issues, and this is the decision tree I mentioned, which includes, but this includes, sorts out all issues that would not be reflected in the final figures of the emission inventory. And I feel that is our European Union approach to reduce the workload, to reduce the length, and to meet the timelines. And if I feel we demonstrated that it worked quite well, and we, of course, what is probably needed is some very good familiarity of the review team with all the rules and guidelines. And we had some discussion already this morning that the capacity of the review team is key. And therefore, there's also a recommendation that review experts should practice in the, inventory compilers should get this practice by participating in the review process. This would be very helpful, and we would lose all those small issues if we have that capacity in all those inventory teams compiling inventories. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. As I said, I don't see more questions or hands raised, and the idea now is to hand over to, I think it's Marta, and then they will continue with the idea of progressing and completing the elements that will be part of the draft conclusions. And I think I'll repeat in case some were not here. The idea is that this breakout group will conclude today at 6 o'clock, and by then the co-facilitators will collect what they have agreed, and they will transmit that to the co-facilitators of the lead reviewers meeting, Thelma and Mihail, and then they will probably consider this as final, and this probably means that they will not discuss it further. So it's important that whatever you want to send to them, it's here and not in the plenary. The plenary, we will not have the time to discuss this. So in addition to that, yes, please use the chat, and again to express, and sometimes also express verbally, which it's also helpful. And then we just have about 2 hours, if I'm not mistaken, to complete this. And so please go ahead. I don't know, Yanis, Marta.
Yes, Peter.
Marta, okay. Another thing, if you want, this is a formal meeting, so if you want to show your image, please go ahead. That's not a problem.
Thank you, Vito.
Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in the second session of this BOC. As Vito was explaining, the idea now is we have a bit more than an hour to discuss about considering the background information we have already received on how to improve the process. and considering the several questions. In preparation to this meeting, we prepared a couple of questions for you to consider. I will check if you can see them properly. Can you see them?
Yes.
Thank you. So we prepared two set of questions for you to consider and to open the discussions. The first couple of questions are in relation to the review reports. We consider that they are too extensive in terms of length and number of issues, and may not transmit the overall assessment to the readers, especially policy level. So what can we do about it? First, to ensure that review reports are effective and in helping parties improving the quality of their inventories, given the timelines in the review guidelines and the date of publication, and to ensure that review reports are shorter, simpler, and more focused. And how can we improve the review process in the following areas? So, could we consider options from other processes within and outside the UNFCCC be used in order to identify options and how to enhance the review process? And what is the urgency of further work in the review process given the potential impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and the need of a timely transition to ETF? So with that, I would like to open the floor for your consideration and opinions, or either by the chat as well if you want to comment on those questions. You could raise your hand if you want to intervene or make yourself available through the chat. During this the first session for this block, we discussed several aspects of how to reduce the expense of the report, alternatives to provide new options instead of tables, use tabular formats instead of text or graphs, as well as to focus on the main issues or those considered relevant.
Martha, I see one hand from Sabelo and a comment from Musami.
The question.
So, Musami, would you like to use the microphone and express your view?
Hi, sure.
Thank you, Musami.
Hi, good day, everybody. I just was suggesting something that came up during our review last fall, and I think maybe based on some of the comments about being sure there's a good understanding of what types of things are most important to raise in the review report, maybe having a refresher training and reviewing some of the good practices could be helpful. I think given things have changed, and I think some people move in and out of the process less frequently. So this just came up as a suggestion from our own group, and I know for us as well, it's a good reminder to have that training maybe closer to the review so you can actually apply it versus I know some of it occurs during, for example, this week when this group does meet in person. So that's just an idea. Anyway, hopefully.
Thank you, Musami. Thank you for your comment. We discussed a similar issue this morning from the perspective of a balance after the reviews for the lead reviewers to consider, to learn from the process and to help us focus on the main issues. But thank you for your contribution.
Oh, and I have one more thing to suggest, and then I'll drop off so I don't take the floor too much. It was just also, I don't know if, also given that there is a lot to think about here and given the time is limited, I don't know if it also makes sense to have a smaller group of people who are maybe interested in looking at it more closely and come back and report to the group next year, this is another consideration.
Thank you.
I
Was
don't
there a hand raise?
No, I think he was regarding. Now we have the pedal.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Great. Yeah. No, I was just a small suggestion. Perhaps just thinking about the issue around the length and the enhancing the report's ability to have an impact on policymakers. I was just wondering, well, whether there could be an option of cutting the report into two parts, into one part that is primarily focused only on key messages and talking directly to the policymakers, and then because of course there will still be a need in some cases where people want to see the very technical details around the reviews. So that could then be a part that could be sort of an annex to the report, while keeping only some sort of a tabular report, very short, into 3 or 4 pages, no more than that. Everything else goes to what we would call the technical sort of annex to the report. That's just my thinking.
Thank you for your suggestions. Do we have other comments or ideas on how to move forward?
No, maybe giving the time, and just my suggestion, maybe you could move to the reporting back from the previous session. Just because we still may take some time. Now we getting okay. It's just a suggestion.
Okay. I will open the floor if there's any comments or suggestions before we take up little ideas. If there's no further comments or hands raised, then maybe Peter, could you project?
There's a Tapelo. There's it's a piece disappear. Yeah, sorry.
It was an old hand, maybe. As Peter explained, we worked this morning in another session for this book, and as part of that work, we prepared a set of bullet points that maybe summarize some of the ideas that are coming up during the conversation. So maybe a way forward would be for you to have a look at the text as possible elements for conclusion of this book to be sent to the lead reviewers. And maybe we can comment on those. So maybe we need a few minutes to go through paragraph 1 and initial paragraph 2.
Sorry.
Not so fast.
He was,
So maybe if you leave paragraph 2, thank you. Is there any comments on this section of the text?
There is a hand from John, raised hand.
Please, John, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't. Point B. Let me just try and read it. It might be me, but developing decision trees that the type and extent of review is determined. Does it mean developing decision trees to show that the type and extent of review is? I'm not quite sure. Are you suggesting that we do that? That we do actually develop decision trees, or that we use decision trees that have been developed? Apologies, I couldn't. I don't quite follow.
Janis, would you like to precise?
Is it a requirement to do so, or is it an observation to follow what's already there? Thank you very much. Sorry if I've misunderstood. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your comment. The idea behind this suggestion was to have a decision tree in order to decide the type and the extent of the review. For example, if the quality of the review reports or the previous review suggest that there is no need for an extensive or a comprehensive review, then we keep this type of review as small as possible. In the other case, if the initial checks, the previous review report, or the quality of the inventory highlights us that there is a need for a more comprehensive review, then to decide to have a more deep review for that party. This is what we want to reflect to this index.
Thanks for the clarification. Thank you.
Is there any comments on these sections until C? Bullet C?
May I, Marta?
Yes, of course.
While we're waiting for comments, I think this is a query from a colleague from the Secretariat. In the paragraph 2, 3 lines, 2 lines, the line one from the one, but not the last one, but the one from the bottom, and it says this sentence which cannot be correct, I think. The complemented guidance for reviewers and review officers for review officers. Something is too many.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
And review officers. Yeah, that's correct. So we have a comment from Tony in relation to bullet B. She still suggests that it doesn't read properly.
Yeah.
To decide or to define the type of and the extent of the review.
Yeah, maybe, but it's yeah, exactly.
We have a raised hand from John.
John, please.
Sorry, my fault. I accidentally clicked the hand. Apologies.
No worries.
You can get a cramp because of that, but you have a comment from Medea, but it's in the chat. I don't know. Marta, can you read the chat? All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you. There's a suggestion in the opposite direction, and establishing the difficulties of adding something to the reports when we are complaining that the reports are too long. So we should not put additional burden on reviewers. That's the main outcome of the comment. I think what we were suggesting here is to, let's take bullet A. It was to provide, maybe following the previous suggestion on dividing the template in 2 sections. One section for policy decision making, more general concepts there, and separating it from the specific and the technical issues. That's what we suggested to show the high level, to add a short high-level summary on the overall situation of inventory. That was for thinking of policy making. Maybe it's worth to consider there to separate the template into sections and into reports.
The decision tree is not an additional burden for the reviewers, is for the Secretariat to decide what type of review to follow for each party.
Yes.
So it's answering to media. But there is a comment from Thelma about item B that it is not very clear. I don't know if Thelma wants to say something about that.
Yeah, will you suggest an alternative? Thelma?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, so I don't really grasp the meaning of this item B, but maybe I'm missing something. So we are developing decision trees to define, I think that is fine, to define which the type and extent of review. Now, this link with by the quality, I think there is something missing after the type and extent of review, taking into account the quality of the inventory. Is that what we mean?
Yes.
On the basis of the quality, or taking into account the quality of the review report and issue checks? Is that what we mean?
Yes, Alma, yes.
Okay, so taking into account the quality of the inventory reported, yeah, sorry.
No, maybe you can try to remove the slashes and maybe in between inventory report and then put it to clarify the language. Maybe this will help.
So what we are suggesting is that we should consider the quality of the inventory to follow
maybe taking this slash in between inventory and, yeah, because I think it's inventory report, right?
Yeah.
And the results of initial check, maybe. That's the idea? Yanis. And sorry, Thelma too.
Yes, this was the idea from the previous group.
Yeah, I think that this makes more sense than what we had previously. It is clearer. Thanks.
Thank you, Thelma.
Okay, and we have a comment from Mosmi, and she
suggests instead of initial checks findings, no, and the result of initial findings. She suggested and the findings of the initial checks.
I think its suggestion will be to replace results with findings. That's my guess.
Is that Musami what you meant?
Oh yeah, I think it. Yeah, I think you typed it as I typed it. So results or findings, findings from the initial checks. That's it.
Thank you.
Small.
And tell me, I don't know. Okay, you comment already.
Yes. She agreed with the use of the word findings in the text. Are there any other comments here from bullets A, B, or C?
There is a comment from Musami for bullet C. Can we see all of it in the screen? And Musami, if you want to tell us about your comment.
I don't think I had a comment. Sorry, did I send something on C yet? No, still reading.
It's about it is a comment about the review handbook. Do we mean Secretariat?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah. I think though my question might be premature until we've gotten through this. I think that's what Vitor responded. So maybe,
okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, right, the intent is that this would be updating, this information would be used to update the handbook. But let me read it first, sorry. I think I'm getting ahead of myself.
But in any case, to clarify, I'm seeing now the comment from Medea that all these are not to be implemented for the next review or for something. All these are to be evaluated by the Secretariat in a paper for the next lead reviewers meeting. So we are still in the status of checking them and considering and evaluating them.
Okay.
Shall we move forward
do you think that, excuse me, Marta, for the bullet A, there was a very good suggestion from Capello that an option to separate the report in two parts, the technical and the one for the policy level. Maybe we can add after table 2 or evaluating the separation of the report in two parts, the policy level, the short, I don't know the right wording, the high-level summary for policy level and the technical part of the review report, something like that. Because I think it's a good suggestion to reflect on the.
May I?
Please.
Okay. Maybe we could think in simplifying the less rows, the better. So just for this principle, including in the beginning, annual template, an additional or something like that. That means that this an additional short high-level summary. I know that this is not exactly the same, but as Mosmi was saying, that maybe it's too. If you already says what you want in specific, that way you need a paper. You could discuss this later, I guess. So it's one option.
There was a couple of comments in the morning and in this session as well in relation to add something new to the template we currently have, as it will make it longer, not shorter. And that's why I think to add here to evaluate, to split the report into parts, maybe provide a way out to that.
So maybe instead of say or evaluating, because I don't think it's or.
Maybe it's another bullet point.
No, I'm not sure but
we have a raised hand from Musami.
Yeah. No, I just think it's not an or because it's in the same sense. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I think it's important that this still be a technical summary. I guess the inventory report is still a technical exercise, and it's I don't know. I like to think that it's also to some extent it's informing policy versus in itself being policy. So I think it's just making sure that the summary, it's a technical summary of the inventory, and I think it also has to have some basis in the review guidelines. So, but I think there is something in the maybe review guidelines that says you can provide a general assessment of the inventory. So maybe it's good to reference that or footnote it. I was just saying the high-level summary should be. It's still a technical summary or synthesis, right? I don't know how we capture that, but that's just a clarification.
Thank you. I think that's what we were thinking. It's a summary for policy making, but it's a technical summary of the result of the inventory. So I think it's still a technical document. although it doesn't have the extent of our actual or current template. Would you like to add something, Vito?
Yes. I'm just reading, following what Mosmi said. I just opened decision 13, CP 20, and then it says in paragraph 10, it says of the annex, it says decides that the summary of the document mentioned in paragraph 8, which is the review report, will include and an assessment of the adherence of the reporting inventory information to the reporting guidelines. Okay, so it mentions an assessment of the adherence to this. So,
yeah. We have a comment from Thelma in the chat that she's not keen on splitting the report. Will you expand on that, Thelma? Complement your idea?
Yes, thanks. Well, I think that my preference would be to leave only the short high-level summary, and not really having another one. Maybe we could, in the high-level summary, already do this technical assessment as well. But I wouldn't create an additional layer for the technical issues. So high-level and then the technical part. So I don't know. This is my first reaction to this, but would be nice to hear from others as well.
Thank you, Thelma. Do we have other comments on this?
There is a raised hand from Musami.
Oh, Musami?
I need to unraise my hand. But I can, I think so the whole thing is technical. We're just adding a synthesis. And if that synthesis is just adding a short piece within the existing, I guess I don't know if that's adding length. I think it would be easier to just have a template understand what this would say before it's easy to comment. So I think for me, it's still an open question of, how this serves the report still a bit. So, but I don't know if it makes that much difference whether it's separate or it's just another maybe piece within table 2. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I have another suggestion. Instead of situation, maybe assessment, because that's the language is in the review guidelines. So only because of that.
Okay.
But this is a suggestion. Brackets is for you, for me.
Okay. Thank you for that, Peter. I think that we should keep in mind that we are suggesting here, or we are asking the Secretariat to evaluate all these options, and we are not making a decision about them. So maybe that will provide a way out from where we are now. So if we ask the Secretariat to evaluate 2 options, one is to add a new section, an assessment, with information from table 2, or take the option of dividing the document. But that's for them to analyze and provide feedback in the next lead reviewers meeting.
Medea provided some comments in the chat, so if Medea wants to take the floor, say something.
I think that short summary and then again inventory summarizing the information, we can shorten that sentence there, and I agree with the option first about not to split the report.
Thank you, Medea. Did you touch that, Vito?
And Thelma also raised her hand.
Well, I kept her, but I think just not a change in the text. My understanding, it's just a preference for option 1. Did I miss something?
Thelma, did you have
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so my first suggestion is already to delete the brackets, to delete the situation and leave assessment. I think that it reflects better so that we evolve in this. And I think that when we are doing this already, this high-level summary, since the whole thing is technical, I think it would be there somehow. So I would strongly say let's not split it. Leave option 1, and I think that it makes it easier. I think the summary will contemplate that already, the technical part already.
Thank you, Thelma. Yes, I think we all agree in that this summary will be technical in any case. Even if it is for policy decision, it will be a technical summary from the annual inventory for the party. Do we have any other thoughts or comments on this from our colleagues? If I understand correctly, then
Philippe Acqua wants the floor.
Yes, I'm on the floor. Yes, this has been one of the key things that we actually started doing. We took them out. Initially, we used to write an explanation and try to link the report with some aspects of the national communication, which is policy, and explain the trends and the impact of the policy, in the report. And then at another point, we took that component out because we were still getting too much, longer text. So if you bring it back again, I'm wondering how short this additional high-level policy test is going to look like.
Very good point. Thank you for bringing us back the history of all this. Any other comments or thoughts on this?
May I, maybe I shouldn't do so many suggestions, but maybe to accommodate what Tipella was saying, and I think it's a good option. Instead of additional separate to maybe to indicate that is something that's not the same. I don't know if that helps. I understand the ideas from Tipella, and I think in the end, in the paper, probably this will be considered if we do it. Yeah.
You mean the summary will be in a separate document, Victor? Is that a suggestion?
No, just saying when we do the paper, probably this is one option that we may consider, and then you decide. We don't decide.
I see. Okay.
I think will come naturally. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we are ahead of us.
Sapelo reacted in the chat, so maybe to share his view.
Yeah, thank you very much, colleagues. Yeah, my thinking was really that we are already talking about the fact that it is long, so adding stuff to the existing report would just worsen the issue that we have just talked about. So my thinking was just that what we have already, we simply split it, but we write the one part with policymakers in mind, summarizing it. So taking some of the tables that you already have and the text, making it to focus to that, but make it be able to be read independently with the rest of the actual specifics of which guess was not reported on and so on being part of the technical. So I think that the analysis by the Secretariat will tell us the extent to which that is possible. and ensure that we do not add. But my consideration really was that we try not to add anything, but to restructure our current report such that it responds to both the technical needs and the policymakers' needs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tapelo, for that. So I think, considering Tapelo's opinion and the suggestion made by Vito, just the last one, we could delete option 2 and we will have all aspects considered in the original writing form.
May I add another suggestion? Sorry to take the floor again. I understand the issue of Tapelo, and I think it's from our point of view, also the Secretary, I think what we do, it's a very valid one. I don't know if you want to add something like without increasing the size of the report after table 2 or something like that. That I don't know if that could help ensuring the increase doesn't help.
Yes, that's a specific requirement from what we're writing.
In the chat we have comment from Tapelo and John.
Yes, please. Tapelo, would you like to comment on this? We can't hear you.
No comment. I think maybe the issue there of considering the split of the report, I think that word would still be important, so that when the people, the Secretariat doing this, the implementation of this, do remember that one of the proposals was just splitting it in one way. So just adding that word somewhere in that paragraph.
Thank you. I think if we have both an additional or separate wording in the first line, that will account for that. But Vito left option 2 there for you to consider, and we have John as well, a comment. Would you like to add something, John?
Thank you. Sorry, I think I get both sides of the argument. We could have a separate short report, or we could combine it with the existing report. All I would say is, if it's with the existing report, it might be easier to synchronize any changes that are made because it's all together in one document. I tend to favour having it in the existing report for that particular reason, but I understand it makes something big potentially look bigger, but perhaps it could be presented as a short standalone section at the beginning. That's it. I shall say no more, and thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Philippe wants to say something.
Yes, please. We cannot hear you.
Philippe?
I'm sorry. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, I was just saying that we want this to look like a very special need that we want to meet. Now, that is very important. So it's not like an additional length, but it's addressing a specific need of policymakers. And I'll give you a very simple example. In the waste sector, if you report in the waste sector a material balance of all the waste streams, and you can show on a simple chart how the streams are changing, like how solid waste is going into incineration and reducing amount that is going to the landfill, how solid waste is going into composting and reducing the amount in the rest. Now, a policymaker can only make sense of a simple chart of all the streams in the way the trends they are in the report. And it will have been written as a test, but then a simple chart for a policymaker will just see how his waste streams are changing as a result of country policies. To some extent, you'll find that that kind of language is spoken much in the national communication. So if you want to adopt it, we just want to say it's a special need, and then we would have to get a guidance as to the type of information we want to put there to guide, reviewers. Thanks.
Very good point, Philip. Thank you for your suggestion or for your consideration. We think it will be we could add here included in the annual review template an additional or separate short high-level technical summary, because we are providing here an idea for the Secretariat to evaluate. So we are not making a decision at the moment. So, and maybe with that addition, we account for Tapello's comments on leaving the possibility of having a separated section. And then we could delete option 2 here. Will you be okay with it? Are there any other comments? I don't see any comments, not in the chat at least.
There is a hand from Telma.
Telma, yes please.
Yes, thanks. I'm still very much confused with this paragraph. I am so sorry about this. So we are including in the annual review template an additional, we are including something additional, right? So I understood that the additional, which we are saying it's high level, is just to summarize the overall assessment of the inventory. Okay, so what do I have in my mind when we say that we are doing this high level summary on the overall situation? Would be, well, it's complete, it's transparent, it's not, I don't know. So this is what I have in my mind. When we go to the technical issues, then based on the table 2, then we would be bringing which are the issues that we identified that sort of explain the assessment in the high level assessment. So I really don't understand why do we need two separate things, really? Maybe somebody can explain to me what would be the difference between this short, high-level summary, where we are saying, well, it's complete, it's transparent, but then we want to say why it is not consistent. Well, it's not, but then we start to really be very elaborative on the technical issues. So I'm really very concerned about how we are going to summarize the technical issues without really increasing a lot the size or replicating already what we have. So I am still not comfortable about this, but maybe somebody can react to what is my understanding of what do I understand by high-level summary of the overall assessment. It regards consistency, transparency, and so on, right? So, and then if we go into the technical issues, then we started to go like, identify the major issues that led us to that assessment. But maybe somebody can react to my point here.
Thank you, Telma, for your comments. Are there any other thoughts? or want Telma was explaining?
Excuse me, Martha, may I say something? Yes, the idea from the previous group in the morning about this bullet A was that the review reports are technical and maybe are not that easily understandable for the policy level. So to include a short high-level summary, two paragraphs, one paragraph, a table with the TAC principles, something like that, in order to provide an easy to understand picture to the policy level about the quality of the inventory. For example, that the inventory follows the TAC principles, or mostly follows, as we say in other review, like BURs, like BRs, etc. To provide the message that numbers, emissions are okay, or that there are a lot of completeness issues. So there is a problem, or there is no problem with the inventory. Something like that, that is easily for the policy level to digest and understand, without provide table 5 with all this discussion about the issues, about all the problems and all the details. A very small summary, similar to table 2, but maybe more easily to read for the policy level.
Thank you, Yanis. There's some comments in the chat.
And Thelma wants the floor. I see her hand.
I didn't raise my hand, but I'm putting some comments in the chat. So if we mean to have the high level, a summary for the high level people do not really sometimes understand the technical issues, right? So they want to understand the overall perception of the quality of the report. So we say, well, it is not transparent. And then we can refer to the paragraphs where, we identify transparency issues, or is not consistent, and then we can refer to, to the paragraphs. But, going into the technical details for the high level, I don't know if we are going to achieve what we want. I am really concerned about this paragraph. The level of detail that we are going to present to the high level.
Thank you, Thelma. I think now I understand your point. So the point is that we are technical here because there was a suggestion from, I think it was Musami, in relation to the fact that these reports are technical per se. It's not a general comment on the inventory. It's based on a technical assessment. But maybe I understand what you are explaining now, and I think it'll be a technical summary anyhow. It won't have the technical details as they are compiled in Table 5, but it will have a high-level assessment of the overall performance of inventory. I think that's what we're looking for. So if we have that understanding, I think it's correct to delete the technical word here in the first line of bullet A, because it'll be based on technical decision anyhow. Are there any comments or thoughts on this?
Musami wants the floor, and Philip.
Thank you. Musami, please.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if John was ahead of me or not. He might have raised his hand as well. So, but I can maybe you can follow me if you still had a comment. I was saying I sort of agree. I guess I'm trying to understand, and part of this is not necessarily saying what it might look like. It's hard to understand how it may complement or add to. And I do understand, like, you want to sort of have something simple that and not just maybe the references in Table 2. There's, is there a way to potentially also, but right, is this statement just going to be saying, this is transparent, consistent, there are minor completeness issues, see the list. So, I mean, is it more appropriate? I mean, I don't know if this also helps, because I think, again, you're probably creating redundancy in however you do this to some extent, because you could also add some sentences next to those specific issues in table 2, which, you know, speak to completeness, and then have the list of issues. Would it be better to put a sentence there or something like that too? I guess I'm not sure how this works, but I certainly understand. I sort of see both sides of this in terms of, I also am not sure how you avoid it being explaining it without getting into the details, and how you summarize it in a way that's also meaningful, given, you know, given what we're trying to do and what our role and scope is in this exercise. So I think, which is noted, this is and I think we all recognize it's sort of a difficult balance. So I think I don't have, again, a great solution, and so, but I see the concerns as well in terms of how meaningful the summary will be, because a lot of it has very nuanced context and requires a detailed understanding of the inventory and how you compile the inventory and the methods in order to make it understandable. So yeah, I guess I'm also struggling a bit with how you make this summary meaningful as well. So, but without seeing something, it's hard to note that. So I think I'm maybe reiterating both sides of the issue. But I'll stop there.
Thank you, Musami. I see some exchanges of ideas in the chat. Maybe John has a few comments, and then Thelma, please, if you could comment to other colleagues.
Thanks. Sorry, I think we've been kind of stuck on this for a while now, and I think we're trying to think how you would operationalize our suggestion, and people are trying to work out how that might look. And there's ideas about tables that could, you know, suggest something, even color, to say it's red, amber, or green. Green is just fine. Red, there's serious problems. That could be politically unacceptable, and so on. And I wonder whether we just say, look, we think this should be investigated, and then maybe take and maybe try then and consider how it would be done at a later stage. And we might actually conclude perhaps that it would be too difficult to do it properly. And I don't think we should be afraid of that, but I think the idea is okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Very good comment. Thelma, would you like to add something?
No, I just agree with John. Yeah, we have to be very careful, you know, how to convey to the high level the quality, and then we are going to say your inventory is no good. So we have to be very careful. I don't think that, you know, eventually we will get this agreement on how to convey this message to the high level. So I still think that we are stuck in this paragraph.
Thank you, Thelma, for your comment.
Sorry.
That's all right.
There is a raised hand by Philippe and Vito.
Okay.
Yes, it's very interesting what we're discussing. As soon as you enter into high-level policy, the word is always non-technical. Because I've been at the compliance committee. If you are at the compliance committee, anything you talk about completeness and, you know, accuracy and the rest is not the language. That is why I agree with the previous contributor that we need to operationalize this. It will mean we have to think through it and get the guidance as to how to really write this non-technical summary, you know, for policy makers. But definitely it's not a technical inventory language. I mean, from my experience at the compliance committee. So if you want to have something that will be meaningful and policy oriented, and that's, you know, and readable and can be digested by policy people, it has to be non-technical.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippe. There was someone else, I think.
That's me.
Sorry, I don't see when people raise hands. So.
It's Vito. I don't know.
Oh, sorry, Vito. Yes.
Okay. Maybe I can explain how Table 2 appeared in the template in 2015. And actually, the name of this table It's the full name is Summary of Review Results and General Assessments of the 2020 annual submissions. So the idea is that this table 2 would be the overall or general assessment of the inventory. I think what the question you're discussing, I don't know, I'm just interpreting what you're discussing, is if you need an additional, or is just that the table 2 cannot convey the information to a non-technical person. And then I think when the table 2 was included in the template, I think we and the lead reviewers that were working on that, I think we're very careful in ensuring that we're following the guidelines. So, and that's on this paragraph 10 is coming. So this is a general assessment of the inventory. But I think that's important that the review is technical. And it's just, I think, my understanding of what you've been discussing, that what you have in table 2, when you have like 10 issues, is this 10 issues on transparency, is this important, or it's actually, if somebody, a policy, is reading the report and sees 8 issues, he may conclude, wow, this is terrible. Or he may conclude, well, I know the review reports, they have many issues, and actually this is quite fine. And I think that's I think that's my understanding. That's what you're talking about. Not so much if the policies are doing well or not. That's my. So I think I don't know if you can frame it in terms of the table 2 and what is missing, or what the table 2 should be considered. And I think that this idea of John, that maybe you can just recommend to take it to revise or to look at it again, maybe it could be a good point. I have to remember, this is not what you have in the chapeau. It's not for the secretary to do it. I think it's in conjunction with the, if I remember well, it was in conjunction with the other lead reviewers. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I was thinking along the same line in relation to that the bullets here are for the secretary to evaluate and provide feedback to the lead reviewers in the next meeting. So maybe we could consider the apprehensions around bullet A. I foresee 2 options. One is to start a sentence as explore the inclusion in the annual review template of an additional separate short high-level summary. So to make sure that we are only suggesting that this is evaluated, we are not deciding about it. And if that is not agreeable, then I would suggest you leave it in brackets. We could come back to this bullet A at the end, once we have gone through the other bullet points, or delete it. Agree and delete it if there is no agreement on this. How do you feel about it? We have some agreement on this and how to proceed with bullet A? Okay, we have in the chat an agreement on leave us explore the inclusion, and then we see what come out of this work the secretary will be doing. If that is agreeable for everyone. I don't see any further comments or hands being raised. Thank you. We will move forward then. We have gone through B and C, as I understood. But we move to Are there any comments?
There is a hand from Thelma. I don't know if that's...
Okay. Thelma, did you raise your hand?
No, sorry, no, I didn't raise.
Thank you.
And Philippe has opened the microphone. I don't know if Philippe, you want to raise something?
It seems that there are no comments on bullet C. Can we move forward to bullet D? Explore the feasibility of implementing an option in the IVTR to provide information to the party on small correction issues in complement to the review reports or an annex to the report.
John wants the floor.
Yes, please.
Thanks. It's a very simple correction. I suggest you just say, and then on small correction issues, comma, complementing the review reports. Just take out in complement to and replace it with the single word complementing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any other comments on bullet B? If not, we will move to bullet E. Explore other options to focus on more important issues, for example, by limiting issues to those that are essential in accordance to the guidelines and the 2006 IPCC. We need to fix them, huh? In accordance to the 2006 IPCC guidelines.
Yes, I think the guidelines may mean that one.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any comments or suggestions for bullet E? If there are no comments, then we can move to bullet F. Improve the readability of review reports by reducing the quantity of text and replace it with graphics, tables, annexes whenever feasible. Comments or views on bullet F?
Mosami wants the floor.
Hi,
Please,
sorry.
Mosami.
Thank you. On E, I just had a question. We say, I think it starts with explore other options to focus on more important issues, for example, limiting that are essential. I mean, but that is our focus. So is it ensuring that we are identifying issues that are related to adherence to the guidance? Maybe it's just a minor, I can think about it, it's just a minor suggestion. I think it seems like that should be our focus if we're doing and including things that go beyond these things. They aren't essential and shouldn't be in the, I mean, those are things that might be in the IVTR complementary piece. But it maybe just, this implies that, I guess it's just the intent and the way it's phrased suggests a little bit otherwise. So I just wanted to, I don't know if that's clear what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, Mosami, didn't get you.
Yeah, I think the way that this is, to me, it implies a little bit, I think it's just the last part of the sentence is, I think, what our focus is when we do reviews. And if there are other things being included, then it means that we're including things that are essential or
Beyond the guidelines.
behind the guidelines. So maybe it's just a framing issue. So I understand the intent of what this is trying to say, but I think this goes back to like making sure that reviewers are familiar with guidelines and the scope of the review and everything like that. So maybe it's just I understand the intent, but I think as framed, it sort of implies it's not as, to me, it suggests that we're allowing other things, which shouldn't be the case, right? That go beyond the guidelines. Yeah.
have you got a suggestion? I think what you meant is this, for example, by limiting issues to those that are essential, right? That's
No,
what
I understand. I'll think about it. I don't have one off the top of my head right now, but if I have something, if this is going to be posted, I can certainly add or send something later, but I'll think about it.
If you think about it and put it on the chat, we can come back to this letter E later on. Will that be okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other views on letter E? Bullet E?
Victor wants the floor.
Okay, Victor.
Thank you. Just complementing what Mosmi was saying, you should not add new issues, but also you should not allow skipping the issues if they're mandatory in UNFCCC reporting guidelines and the 2006 IPCC guidelines. So I think when you say more important issues, the criteria, I think you have to think of the criteria that you want, and you cannot be in accordance to the guidelines, because that is mandatory. Well, unless you define what is essential. What's essential may be a word.
Excuse me, can we add here, let's say, something to prioritize on important issues? So instead of explore other options to focus on more important issues, explore other options to prioritize review efforts on more important issues, something like that. Because from the previous meeting, this was the idea behind that, to prioritize the efforts of the ERT, of the Secretariat, to the most important issues that affect the emissions, and don't pay attention to very small issues like correction of the report, that this can be included in the VTR, as we said in the previous bullet.
Thank you, Janice and Vito, for those comments. Are there any other views on this? There's Thelma was writing in the chat. Would you like to use the floor, Thelma?
Yes, thank you. My proposal was to delete this paragraph, because I think that it's difficult to really identify what are the more important or most important issues. I think that we have to follow, the UNFCCC reporting guidelines, the 2006 IPCC guidelines. So I don't see too much value on leaving it as most important issues might be too subjective to me. So this is why I was proposing to delete this paragraph.
Thank you, Thelma. Will it be better if now we have to prioritize the issues? So we need more guidelines on how to prioritize our efforts when writing the reviews? Thelma?
Prioritize could improve, but who is going to prioritize? Who is going to indicate what are the priorities? The Secretariat?
That's what we're asking, we're asking them to evaluate.
Sorry?
If we put it here, we will be asking the Secretariat to explore options to guide us on how to prioritize the issues. That's what we're asking with this bullet. That will mean further guidance from the Secretariat on how to make the decisions.
Do you mean that would be in the review handbook? How to prioritize? I find it a little bit, complicated. Yeah, sorry. I'm shutting off.
No. That's perfect, Thelma. I was thinking that it's the same approach we took for bullet A. This is to ask for the Secretariat to evaluate this option. We're not deciding. And if next year when we have the review paper on these topics. There is an alternative on how to do it, and that requires further guidance or updating the materials. That will be part of the analysis, I think, if I understand correctly the process.
Maybe I can
Yes,
I? Well, first a small one. Explore other. I don't think other applies because I don't know where other means. That's easy, I think. And the second one, no, I'm just saying in terms of language, there's no, we don't, other options, you never mention options above. That's my comment. What I think you're looking, it's, my reading, you want us to indicate how you would prioritize your efforts. And my understanding is without reducing the scope of the review, and which will be based on the reporting guidelines and 2006 IPCC guidelines, whatever, you want to prioritize during the review which ones you start. That's it. Not to say only to do those, but to start, to prioritize. Give priority is to look at it first. Is that okay? Is that what the meaning? Because to limiting that, like you have in the scope of the desk reviews, I think it's more complicated. But maybe it depends on what you understand by prioritizing.
We have a comment in the chat from Mosami and a raised hand from Thelma.
Okay, I will. Mosami, would you like to comment, please? I think your second comment could be quite useful.
Yeah, I can see if it helps, but it may not help. I mean, yeah, the other option might be to include an option to not have it, but that was, I think, the other suggestion. So there's option 1 to keep E as and refine it, or option 2 maybe to remove it. Yeah, I was just trying to build off of what Vitor was starting, but I think some of the words, yeah, what we're trying to do is explore sort of mechanisms or tools or approaches to help ensure that we are focusing on the issues we need to be focusing on, is how I understand what we're trying to say here. But if that's not what we're trying to say, then I don't know if this will be that helpful. But is it explore means or tools or mechanisms or options? I guess you have options. Explore options. Are we looking explore training tools? Is that what we're thinking of? I don't. Maybe that's too prescriptive too. So I think what I'm struggling with is I understand what you're saying. You want to ensure that we're not spending effort on minor things potentially too, but I think that sort of gets addressed in D to some extent. So I'm not helping here, so I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Mosami. You're always helping. Right, colleagues. We have, as I see, 2 options. One is work a bit more on the wording for letter E, otherwise to delete it. So are there strong views on for one of those alternatives? Yanis, yes?
Martha, Thelma raised the hand, but before Thelma, I could suggest that this bullet more or less is covered by B, C, and maybe D. So I would be okay if if it's difficult to decide to delete this bullet. But first to hear from Thelma too.
All right. Thelma?
Yes, thank you. Well, I don't really see a value for this paragraph. Well, we could say that the Secretariat suggests possible ways, but you know, in my vision, what this would be saying would be, well, start with the key category, with the key category activities and so on. Or you can start by looking how the country implemented previous recommendations. So I find this unnecessary, to tell you the truth. So when we say by limiting issues to those that are essential, so we are creating a language here that makes it very difficult to understand where we are getting with this bullet. So I would propose deletion.
Okay. Are there any other comments or strong views for the other option, which is do not delete, letter E? Are we all okay with deleting it? I don't see comments on the chat.
No hands.
No hands. All right. Thank you. Then we move to letter F. Improve the readability of review reports by reducing the quantity of text and replace with graphics, tables, annexes whenever feasible. Comments or opinions on bullet F? There are no comments in the chat.
You have Masumi.
Yeah, I was just going to say, could this also be maybe explore options to improve? Perfect. Just, yeah.
Thank you, Musami. Explore options to improve. Thank you. Any other comments or ideas about bullet F? No comments in the chat.
I just have maybe a suggestion. When you say reports, by reducing, you want to be prescriptive, or you want to say, for example, by reducing, because it's just my, if that's fine. For instance, it says, for instance, I think it's better. Thelma.
Yes, sorry. There was a comment in the chat, Thelma?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments on bullet F? Thank you, colleagues. Then we move to letter G, evaluate the feasibility of establishing a hard cutting-off date for the reports to be sent to the party. Are there any comments on this bullet? Opinions? There are no comments in the chat.
Thelma wants the floor.
Thelma, please.
Yes, thanks. Should we say identify? Maybe I need someone to help me, but I would say to identify the barriers for the reports to be sent late to departure or something like that. So I need someone to help me here. Maybe Victor can help. So identify the barriers or the bottlenecks, or maybe English-speaking people can help me here if they know what I mean. So when you're evaluating the feasibility, what you're doing is assessing how you would overcome the barriers for sending the reports, to a certain date. Did I understand the issue correctly?
Yes, Helga, that's the idea. That's correct. Are there any other suggestions on how to rephrase this bullet? or considerations to be considered?
John raised the hand.
Yes, please.
Thanks. Could we say, evaluate the feasibility of establishing a hard, I would just say cut-off date rather than cutting off. Yeah, I think people know what you mean, but I think it's better. Evaluate the feasibility of establishing a hard cut-off date for the reports to be sent to the party, comma, which will then what could we say, which will then encourage the timeliness of the review process or something like that. That's what we're trying to do, isn't it? Make sure there aren't excessive delays in the process, yeah? As I understand this point.
Thank you, John. I think that's the bottom line for this bullet.
Thank you.
But I was thinking that we already have cut-off dates for the reports to be sent to the parties, right? So maybe the suggestion by Thelma will better clarify what we are seeking here. So if we have cut-off dates and we have difficulties to fulfill those dates, then maybe what we need to do is to further analyze what are the barriers to fulfill those dates. So maybe we could start with the suggestion by Thelma, identify limitations or barriers. Peter, are you there for the typing?
Yeah, I'm here, but maybe I see that the fellow is before.
Oh, sorry. Tapalo, please.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think I certainly agree. We already have cut-off dates, but I think the question is why are we not meeting those deadlines? So it's an assessment of bottlenecks or barriers, and then I would then say the second step would be proposals on how to mitigate those bottlenecks or those challenges.
Thank you. Thank you for your proposal. I think there is also in the chat a suggestion by John.
Yeah.
John, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Maybe we could start this. I understand now. So maybe we could say, analyze what barriers there are to ensuring that, I should have said that, the report cut-off dates are met. Do we need to say any more? If that's the point of this, of point G.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I still have my comment. I don't know. It's not this point. It's in the beginning. I don't know if you want to. My point at the beginning is when you say evaluate the feasibility of establishing a hard cut-off date, and as Stepello and others mentioned, the hard cut-off dates already exist. So I think when you say evaluate the feasibility of establishing a hard cut, it's not the right wording. Maybe evaluate options to ensure that the cut-off dates are achieved or something like that. Yeah.
Analyze the barriers and evaluate options in order to achieve the cut-off days. Very good.
Thank you, Janis. Good suggestion.
I copy the suggestion from John from the meeting chat.
Team effort. Well done.
So maybe then you could take out until till which?
But to define which cutoff dates, the cutoff dates for the reports to be sent to the party.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if to be sent to the party. I don't know if in general you want to, because there are several. I don't know if that's only the party that you want to mention.
No. I mean, yes.
There are several cutoff dates. That's correct. But if we meet the one for the party, it meant that we have fulfilled all the previous dates.
We have raised hand from Stanford and Telma.
I just want to make an observation that paragraph I is very similar to G now, and we might want to consider the two now if we need to merge them rather than later, because they seem to be overlapping now. Paragraph G and I.
Thank you. That's correct. I think it's a good suggestion, or paragraph I will be, it's probably considered already in what we have in G. So we could delete the last bullet point. But what we are missing was a suggestion, I don't remember from whom, about the mitigation actions. We could analyze the barriers, I think, in paragraph G. And but there was a suggestion to mitigate those problems or those barriers. I think that's a good point, if you agree. There was a comment from Telma in the chat. Would you like to comment, Telma?
Yeah, thanks. I was in doubt if we should delete I or we should delete G. To me, if we are happy with I without any comments, then we could leave I and delete G. But I would be fine with both of, is one or another. It's just for the simplicity maybe of having someone more ready than the other one.
Thank you, Telma. So are there any other views on this? We have two paragraphs which are quite similar now, or that are addressing the same difficulties. So it will be
maybe
a repetition to have them both.
Maybe I'm going to complicate. I don't know. But
Musami,
would you like to comment, please?
I don't have strong feelings, but I could be an example of one of the analyses that you focus on under G, so it could be a sub-element, but so it could be included as an example, but I think we were typing simultaneously, so. But I'll let others add. I think that H also seems a little bit of potentially related, but it's just noting, so it's not necessarily the same. Okay. So it's just G and I.
Yeah, I think G is more specific, and it's a general comment. That's what we are addressing. Are there any other views in this?
Philippe may want the floor because I saw his hand.
Yes. Yes. I was just going to, compliment the previous contributor that we keep one of them. We keep G or I, but if you want to keep G, then you would have to reflect some ideas in I to make it comprehensive.
Thank you, Philip. Capello?
Thanks. I was going to suggest a similar. Well, first of all, I was going to suggest that the evaluation of establishing a hard cut-off date be removed, and I realize that we have now taken that away. But to me, I really do not see the difference between G and I. It is really just the wording, except there is, for me, that in G, that element of options to mitigate the challenges does not exist in I. So I would say we keep one or the other, but whichever one we keep, we go beyond just a bottleneck analysis or a barriers analysis to say, well, what are those options available for us to mitigate the bottlenecks?
Thank you, Capella. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's good to include the possibilities of evaluate options to mitigate the difficulties we have already, and I will leave it as it is. There's a comment from Victor in the chat, but I don't know if there is any other thoughts on this.
This is the same. Is maybe because of what suggestion to solve the issue of Capello and partly Philippe, after saying analyze what barriers and bottlenecks there are. And this may complement and join the two paragraphs. And then another comment I have on paragraph G, it looks, I don't know, maybe it's my reading, it appears that to be duplicating the guidance, because you said analyze to ensure that the reports are met, and then we'll say which will then encourage the timeliness of the review. I think in the end it's almost the same, so maybe you could also keep only which will then encourage the timeliness, or to encourage the timeliness of the review. Yet I think there's some duplication there.
Okay.
Or maybe you can take also some options that you have in I, if you think that's better.
You could actually delete everything after met and leave it on the unproposals to mitigate those challenges. I agree with you, there's kind of repetition in between.
I think the starting of the line of G is not that clear. Analyze what barriers there are to ensure the report cut-off days. The barriers do not ensure the meeting of the cut-off days, but hinder us. So maybe we should change here the language.
Mm-hmm.
The barriers that prevents for meeting the cut-off days.
Right.
I mean, John probably much better than me, but analyze what barriers there are.
Okay, yeah, it's John here. Analyze what barriers, brackets and bottlenecks there are to meeting the report cut-off date. Put ing, to meeting the report cut-off date. To ensuring analyze what barriers, brackets and bottlenecks there are to ensuring the report cut-off dates are met. That's correct. To ensuring the report cut-off dates are met. That's right. That's correct. That works as a sentence.
And then we will have proposals to mitigate. can suggest proposals. We have a suggestion in the chat from Salma.
Stanford wants the floor.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, you have your own editors for these reports, but I'm just concerned that if you are talking of barriers, and then we are saying there are to ensuring report cutoff dates are met, it's almost like saying barriers ensure report cutoff dates are met. So I don't know, it's an English thing. So I'm not English is not really my first language. But when we say what barriers there are to ensuring report dated cutoff dates are met, aren't we suggesting we are looking for barriers that ensure report cutoff dates are met?
Capello also wants the floor.
Capello?
And Telma.
Thank you very much. Sorry if I'm taking us back. Somehow I have a feeling that I is more ready to use than G. We could just add perhaps a suggestion to mitigate the bottlenecks or challenges. I think I is already covering the bulk of what you want to say in G. Of course, it doesn't specify cutoff dates, but the message seems to be the same. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Capello. Telma, you wanted to give us?
Yes, thank you. Very quickly. So maybe to address some of the comments that have been made, one proposal could be analyze what barriers and bottlenecks there are that prevent the cutoff dates to be met. There are that prevent the cutoff dates, the report cutoff dates to be met. Yeah. And then I would say, and suggest ways instead of proposal, and suggest ways to mitigate those challenges. So I think that's what people, the prevent might solve the issue or the concern that some have expressed. I hope so.
Thank you, Telma. Are there any other comments?
Martha, can I
Yes.
say something? I'm sure that John speaks and writes English better than anyone from us, but I see some cursor from me, from my friend, Stanford, that we don't understand this ensuring thing. So I prefer the suggestion from Telma for non-English speakers that their language is not, the mother language is not English.
Thank you. If there are no further comments on this, we will leave it as it stands now, and I will mean we will delete bullet I.
John agrees. Thank you, John.
And we will need to delete the, for example, at the end of letter G as well. Yes. Thank you, colleagues. We are running out of time and we still have a few paragraphs to review. I will ask you please focus on bullet H.
Stanford goes to the floor.
My only comment on bullet H is the sequencing between bullet G and H, because we seem to be talking of barriers, and then we make a suggestion, and then we once again focus on one particular barrier, bottleneck. So if it's okay, we could sequence H before G, and in G just say analyze all main barriers and bottlenecks, as if it's a continuation from one bottleneck that has been observed, and therefore leading to a general conclusion that, okay, I think this has to be done now.
Thank you for the suggestion, Ms. Comfort. Are there any other comments? We have an agreement for the last suggestion from John. Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on bullet H, current bullet H? There's nothing in the chat.
Stanford, your hand is raised. Do you want the floor or is left? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further comments on the bullets, we could move to paragraph 3, please, Victor.
So, these are the last paragraphs, or we have para 7? I don't remember. No, there are the last paragraphs.
Until 6. So paragraph 3 requests the Secretariat to organize regional webinars available to both reviewers and inventory compilers after the 2020 review process, with the scope to engage more reviewers to the review process, maybe arrange that, improve capacity of both reviewers and compilers, and focus on prioritization to key issues of greenhouse gas inventories and review process. I think we have a repetition there. It's a review, 2020 review process. After the review process, there is a repetition there.
This was a suggestion from Thelma in the previous meeting. I don't know if we reflect her thoughts to this paragraph. And Thelma, if you want to take the floor and explain us if you are okay with this, or you need to add something else.
No, thank you. I think this is an interesting proposal that we could do this regional webinars. I'm just not comfortable to the way it reads at the last line, the line before the last. So it would be improved capacity of both reviewers and compilers, and maybe focus and prioritize the key issues on greenhouse gas inventories and review process. And prioritizes on the key issues. Yeah, I think that it reads better.
On the key issues. On the key issues.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thelma. We have an agreement from John to the chat.
Thelma, thanks. Just delete the word to. So, improve capacity of both reviewers and compilers. You could put a comma, and focus and prioritize. Focus and prioritize. Yeah, it's okay. On the key issues of GHG inventories and the review process, probably. Yeah. We could fiddle around for a long time, but I think provided it's good enough, and prioritize on improve capacity of both reviewers. Sorry, I'm reading it out. People don't want to hear me reading. Improve capacity of both reviewers and compilers, and focus and prioritize the key issues of GHG inventory and the review process, I would say. But thanks.
Thank you, John. Are there any other comments or thoughts on paragraph 3? Nothing on the chat.
Oh. Hi, this is most of me. Sorry, just a quick note. Is it focus and prioritize the webinar content? Is that what we're trying to say?
No, the result of it's a learning process from the previous review process.
Okay. Okay, never mind.
Thank you. If there are no further comments on paragraph 3, we can move to paragraph 4. Forest party to provide and incentivize for experts to participate in the review process. Any comments on this? No comments in the chat. Well, we have
Raised hand by Vito.
Yes, Vito, please.
Yep. I'm fine with the paragraph, although I think in previous recommendations you could collect a more complete paragraph from the previous years. And the second thing is, this is more for Thelma. I'm not sure the place of the paragraph is here or elsewhere in the conclusions, because I think this could be more general than this breakout group. And well, and my final comment is it's not be editing, it's Roman, so but it's a minor detail. So I don't know. I think you can work. I think we can copy the paragraph from previous recommendations if that's the case, because I think you have if you want to mark, we can. I think in the previous conclusions we have something like that.
Thank you, Victor. And then we have two final paragraphs that are, as Victor explained, are more general and not necessarily related to the work of this book. So you can consider. Paragraph 5.
So, sorry, Marta, my comment was only for paragraph 4 in that regard, not for the other ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have two, as I was saying, two final paragraphs that are more general and that appear as comment in the previous session of this book. So if you could consider paragraph 5, please. No comments on paragraph 5? Nothing in the chat? If not, we can move to paragraph 6. This is as well a general comment. Paragraph 6. We have a comment in the chat. We are missing the full stops at the end of paragraph 5 and 6, please. Thank you, John. Are there any further comments on paragraph 6?
There is a raised hand from John and a request from Thelma for John to help. And
yeah, I'm just going to be very quick here because you know, we're almost out of time. But I don't quite message or transmitting message. Do you just mean to relay the findings of the lead reviewers to Substa that our experience is something like that? I'm not quite sure. Anyway, I'm not going to worry too much about how you phrase it, but I think you just need to just change that formulation a bit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Mosami raised a hand and Telma proposed some text in the meeting chat.
Thank you, Musami. Are you still there?
Oops, sorry. No, I think maybe some of it's been addressed, so maybe nothing else. I think on the last part, I think it's in particular to consider consider ways to, but maybe it's fine. I don't think it'll change the meeting, so I think John has covered it. Thanks.
Thank you, Musami. All right. So we could find a better wording for the beginning of paragraph 6. There is a suggestion from Sakai. Would you like to expand on that, Sakai? Combine the findings.
Just usually all paragraphs start with lead reviewers did something. So convey. We would like. I don't know. When you're addressing
combine the findings. There is a suggestion from Sakai.
I don't know
combine the findings.
Yeah, I think Roman, if you could repeat, we didn't understand quite well the suggestion. Convey and what?
Convey the findings in the relay.
Noted.
That's a suggestion.
Okay.
That's suggested by convey, not conveying.
Convey, yes.
Thank you, Sakai. That was also by John.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, we do so. So, Telma also suggests in the chat that the current process might be useful for preparing for the ETA. That's the same comment by Musami. Thank you, colleagues. Are there any...
Marta, can I?
Yes, Yannis, please.
I think the message from this sentence is that to convey the experience of the current process to convey the message that the experience of the current process is useful to the substaff for preparing the ATF work. So, not the findings from lead reviewers meeting, but the whole experience of the current reviewing process.
Yes, what you have in the second sentence, Visto. The experience from the current process.
We have a raised hand from Philippe.
Philippe, please. The floor is yours.
Just want to know who is conveying the findings. The lead reviewers noted that something is missing.
Yeah, I think it's missing.
I think John has made a suggestion there on the chat.
The lead reviewers
wish to convey. Wish to convey. It's in the chat.
Yeah, I think usually it's a very uncommon language to say you wish to convey, because when you report, the substaff is going to read this report, so they don't need to wish to convey it. So when you write it in the report, substaff will read it. I don't know. I remember sometimes some years ago, Stanford helped us with that. I don't know if you can help again. When
would like to convey?
No, you don't. I don't think you'd like to convey. You do it or you don't. Now there is missing. Note it to the substaff may be a little bit strange as well. I mean, I'm not native. I'm native speaker, but not of English. So
from Musami, there is another suggestion: note to Substa that
the findings
inform.
This is Roman at the keyboards. And can you repeat the specific proposal? Edit text?
No, there are many proposals in the text, inform, noted, but also we have some raised hands from Stanford, Philippe, I think.
Yeah.
Stanford.
Yeah, I was thinking that we want the Substa to take note. How do we contextualize that? I'm not sure, but we have these observations that we would like the Substa to take note for appropriate sort of processing. So that's what my thinking on that.
Thank you, Stanford. Yes. Somebody else had raised their hands?
Philippe?
I think I'm okay with the submission of Stanford. Yes, the lead reviewers, would want Substa to take note of something. So that's fine. I'm fine with what Stanford just suggested. Yeah.
Thank you, Philippe. Any other colleague?
Noah?
We will try to work. There is a suggestion from John in the chat. That we could use here. Maybe useful. We are running out of time.
Another suggestion is only to say the lead reviewers take note without mentioning Substa, like this with the brackets.
Well, I understand that, but that's also strange because may sound strange because you say take note. Usually you say take note of what the secretary presents or somebody does, but that I think what you want, my understanding, you want to really convey this message to the Substa. That's what I think you want. And so I think I agree that I also don't find the right formulation, but I think that's the idea. You want to convey that information to the Substa. And that's something that you want to transmit. I think, I don't know how you can, maybe, John, you could help with trying to find a very, very clear, but I think you should not go around. That's what you're transmitting to Substa.
There is a choice proposed by John in the chat that the lead reviewers wish to convey to Substa that experience and continue. We have these options there.
Can I just ask that, Vita, you're saying that Substa will look at this anyway, so is there an additional need to say for them to consider in their deliberations? I don't know, or you'll be telling them what to do?
I think, well, first, if you say wish to convey to Substa, I said that wish, maybe it's not yeah, but maybe it's better formulation. I mean, the SAPSTA reads the report, this report, well, and then we'll notice that there are some requests for secretariat, some requests for parties, some requests for lead reviewers. And if you don't say that this is for SAPSTA to take notes, because that's what you say, you want, hey, SAPSTA, when continuing the discussions on ETF, please take in consideration the experience with the current. It may be useful to take in consideration the experience with the current process. That's what you're just alerting SAPSTA. You cannot say alert, but I think maybe the wish to convey to SAPSTA, I think maybe it's still okay. It's the best one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think if it's, I think it's in the end. I mean, if you think of a better solution, it's better. But I think it was still the one that represents what you want to say to SAPSTA. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments. So we have the lead reviewers wish to convey to SAPSTA that experience maybe from the current process there. Your final consideration on this last paragraph? We have no comments in the chat.
I have Stanford.
Stanford, please.
I just want to reiterate on the point that Vito was making. The fact that, yes, we know the SAPSTA will read this report. But at the same time, we want to emphasize that we are not preparing these reports for them to just read and say, okay, we have read and they just put it aside. We want to emphasize that these are things that we have experienced and we would like them to at least take note for appropriate action. But if it's just a question of conveying, yeah, somebody will say, yes, I read it, okay, that's fine. But if the point of taking note is basically we are very diplomatically suggesting that, you know, where appropriate action should be taken. So that was my thinking. It's not just a question of them reading, because then if that's the case, we don't even need paragraph 6, because basically we are going to do that anyway, to convey.
Thank you for that comment. I would like to hear colleagues about this. If you want to make a stronger statement here.
Okay. Yes. Just to maybe add to what Stanford is saying, that we are not just conveying a message, we want them to take additional action. So should we be saying that for them to also consider the possibility of
I think
maybe the possibility of using the lessons learned from this experience to enhance in preparation of the enhanced transparency framework?
Maybe you can, instead of possibility, importance, because...
Okay, sure.
From this process, no?
Yeah, from the current process.
Oh, current process.
I think we can keep both the lessons learned and the experience. But I'm open to other views.
Yeah, I think it, yeah.
Thank you, Sekar, for those suggestions. Are there any other comments Suggestions about this paragraph? I see no comments in the chat.
Yeah, we have some suggestions by Roman to, if you need, may be useful. Yeah. Because may it appears that you conditional, yeah.
Yeah, and we are saying it's important. Yes, thank you for that suggestion. I don't see any other comments in the chat. Well, colleagues, thank you very much for your time, for your work. We are 10 minutes past the deadline for this meeting. I would like to thank you all for your contributions. Maybe Vito could summarize the next steps that will be coming through these couple of days, please.
Okay, thank you, Marta, and thank you. Well, if you cannot take it, if you could keep it, well, just asking if you can clean it, and we can clean it, and just I think there's nothing to be discussed to check the final check. There's nothing to be considered. Yeah, I think so. Roman is cleaning, but you maybe you can pull the report a little bit up so you can see what you're doing. No, the other way around. Yeah. Yeah. And then you can do it. Yeah. No. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, give it a take. You have a clean document, and so the understanding have you consider this the text coming from this breakout group, and we can do something. We can transmit this to the co-facilitators, and actually I think they were here, so I think they have seen. And anyway, we can transmit, and then maybe we can look at the things that we still need to improve on the language, and then we would send it by maybe this later in this to you and Yanis later, maybe in 1 hour or something, the cleaner version, and then this should be sent by you to the co-facilitators tomorrow morning at 9. Yeah.
Thank you, Vito.
Any question on this? All right. Another thing for the participants in the other session, what we try to ensure is, as soon as possible, there's a bit of a bottleneck again, but is to ensure that we have the recording available on the web page, and so they can see what we discuss today, if they want, and so they also do not get surprised by the outcome. Okay. And then I think you also, if you want to see the previous sessions, then will be also available. I think with that we're transparent, and we ensure that both sessions will have the available information, and then this will go to the plenary, and as we discussed before, it will be up to the co-facilitators to do with it, but the rule is no discussions of this on the plenary. This is something probably it's of course it's up to co-facilitators, but probably would they take it or leave it. So again, thank you very much. I think with 15 minutes spillover, I think we did it very well. And so tomorrow you have a rest day. Maybe you should check the emails or check the webpage. But apart from that, I see you on Thursday at what time? 12 o'clock. So on Thursday there will be only one session for the whole group, because this is discussions of the conclusions, and you'll be provided with a full set of conclusions and recommendations on tomorrow, and then we have the opportunity to comment, but then you have the final consideration on Thursday. So thank you very much. I think it was a very helpful meeting and a very good suggestions and working environment, and see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Victor. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys.
Take a photo.
Yeah, that's nice.
Philip! It's been a long time.
Very long time, yes.
That's true.
Great.
Nice to see you all. Bye.
Yeah, that's right. Technology,
Yes.
generation of technology.
How are you, my bro?
Long time.
Okay.
I'm glad to see you're still keeping well.
Yeah, thank you.
So Philip, how is Accra? That's everything's okay.
Fine.
I see you are celebrating your recent wins, eh?
Yes, the wins, yeah. Because
okay, good for the blues.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
All right, cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Philippe was my first teacher in inventories.